Good morning, boys and girls of the internet. Today is Wednesday, August 1st, 2018. Vlog number, I have to think about this now. 212. It's going to throw me off now. Finally got to a date where my number is going to be messed up. Crap. So, yesterday was 2/11, the 31st. Well, probably all this month I'm going to be really screwed up. I was watching this interesting video last night about the rise, and it's not something new, but it was, the video brought up a lot of good points. By people being concerned with the rise in sex robots. Yep. Now, in my mind, I'm a futurist, so I kind of foresee that as a inevitability. That, yeah, humanity, we're just going to have sex robots in the future. But the big concern is coming from women. Now, I'm not like a misogynist. I'm all for equality. I'm all for, people voicing their opinions about, sex and sexuality. But, it kind of seems odd that, some of these people, when they decry the rising up of sex robots, their argument against it is, it sounds familiar. What does it sound familiar to? Well, it almost sounds as familiar as any dude who would say, hey, that chick is using a dildo or a vibrator or something. I can't compete with that. They're making us obsolete. They're making men obsolete. This is the same argument that some of these women are making about sex robots. They're afraid the sex robots, female sex robots for men to use, is to make women obsolete. And they're decrying that, these guys who are making these sex robots, all they want to do is make make women obsolete. I don't think the creator of the dildo ever wanted to make men obsolete. Either way you feel about people using other tools to achieve sexual pleasure other than a human body, it's not cheating. People might say, it's degrading your relationship with your significant other. It's not, though. It's merely enhances, for a lot of people, it just enhances your pleasure. It adds to it. And sometimes, I'm sure as any guy or girl would say, sometimes masturbating by hand just doesn't do it. Because whether you have a toy or not, people want to masturbate. This might be, a very racy and uncomfortable subject, but it's an adult conversation that needs to be had. I'm not here, I'm not degrading anybody for masturbating. It's a healthy thing for people to masturbate. There's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes your hand just doesn't cut it. Women would say, their fingers don't cut it. They want to have something else. They want to have something that vibrates. They want to have something that, penetrates deep or something. They want to have different things that do it for them. Just like a guy, they want to have something that, they want to have a fleshlight that sucks them off or something like that, or applies, pressure and suction, and sometimes they have like rotation and stuff. No women can do. A woman can't do that. I don't know. Maybe they can. Some women can. But it just, the whole idea of a sex robot, it's just taking that, and I'm not talking about just like a sexual machine that just, it's just like a device that just kind of has a piston on it and then goes back and forth. No, I'm talking about a full humanoid replica, just a silicone doll that fully looks like a real person, but with these sex robots. Now, real dolls have existed for a long time, but these sex robots are adding a new level to it, is because they're adding, facial motion and speech, eye movement. Now, in my mind, the way they're at now, if I had the money for one, and I really wanted one, I wouldn't get one now, because that shit is too creepy. The way they move and talk now, it's like, no, they're not at a level that is acceptable enough for me. I'm sorry, they're not. I'm not saying I want more realism. I'm just saying I don't want something so creepy. If you want to look like a robot, look like a robot. If I want to be having sex with a robot, make the bitch look like like a Terminator or something. I don't know. That I can accept. That would be weird. It's a weird fetish. Not my fetish. I don't want to fuck a Terminator. But at least, I'm not talking Arnold Terminator. I'm just talking about Cyberdyne Model 101, skeleton. Have that be a sex robot. Just be a full bare skeleton, or have some kind of weird futuristic looking face to it that was like cybernetic looking. I don't know. That's futuristic. But go back to the people who are complaining about it. In the video I watched, made a good point. And again, it's an argument that people have made when men cried about dildos. It's like, well, if you're afraid of some machine or tool making you obsolete, how good are you anyway? Really? Like, are you that good in bed? Obviously you're not, because you're scared something's going to replace you. I can't speak for myself. Interview a couple ladies, maybe. They can speak for me. I'm kidding. Again, if you're afraid something's going to replace you, and the guy made, of course, he was joking, but people can construe it as a very, misogynistic statement. He said, all the kitchen appliances we've had, that's already making women obsolete. A dishwasher, a freaking blender, a stove, that's making women obsolete. It's very misogynistic, but it's funny as hell. Because, way back in the day, a dishwasher was your wife. the clothes washing machine, that's your wife. That's so sexist. But still, mostly, I'm assuming people who want sex robots, they can't get a woman anyway. Most of them, I would assume. Of course, these things are going to be really expensive, so I'm always thinking, if you could afford a sex robot because you can't get a woman, you have the money to pay a woman for sex. You have the money to go to Nevada and go to a brothel and get a really nice prostitute for a long time. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars here. Heck, a regular real doll that has no robotic parts whatsoever, those things are already like $5,000. So if you can afford those, I'm like, yeah, okay. If you buy one, you have it forever. You have it for as long as you want it. So It's not like, if he's dropped like $5,000 on a prostitute, you're only doing her once. But again, if you have that kind of scratch to drop on a sex toy, it's pretty much what it is. It's just a giant sex toy. Then I'm thinking you probably have some money. Now, unless you're someone who doesn't make that much money, but have saved and saved and saved for like 10 years. And he has $5,000 to drop on a real doll, and that's his life savings. Okay, but again, most of the people that, it's kind of a stereotype to say, but if they want to drop that kind of money on a full sex doll, I have to assume they have a hard time getting women. So they just want something as close to a woman as possible, that they can make love to. Because they want something there. Now, the other thing that the article, the guy who doing the video, he's reading off an article. And the article was super ridiculous about how this kind of thing it will lead to, sexual depravity, and they somehow tied a line to child exploitation. What? And the guy was like, How do you what? How did you draw that line from sex robots to child exploitation? It doesn't compute whatsoever. In fact, I am more willing to bet that if people had regular access to a sex robot, like say for example, what if I had a store that you could rent time with a sex robot? You could do with it what you want for like an hour, or half hour, 15 minutes, I don't know. It'd be fully cleaned and and prepped and stuff for every person. And you could just go in there instead of having to pay a lot of money for to buy a sex robot. You could rent time with one. I think that's better than that person being sexually depraved and going, God, I need to get a release. And he goes and rapes somebody. Because all he wants to do is get his rocks off. Most of the time, he just wants to nut. But if you give him an outlet that's safe and hurts nobody else, but just lets him get a release on his own with a sex robot, I think that's a good thing. Same thing it relates to prostitution. I think we have all kinds of people who are fed up in this country and pent up, frustrated with things that are in their mind are not related to sex. But I think if people have sex more often on a regular basis, they'd be happier people. That's why I think prostitution should be legalized. But until then, let people have their sex robots. Women have been using dildos for decades, like 100 years. The first vibrator came out for women for massaging. So, if women can have their dildos, let men have their sex robots if they want. Hell, women can have sex robots, male sex robots. Let everybody have sex robots until prostitution is fully legalized. That's my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think. It's a very interesting subject, adult subject, so hope your little kiddos are not listen to this. My show ain't for kids. I don't know. That's all for today. Everybody have a good day. I'll talk to y'all later. And I love you.